Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving straight into the structural reversal of hyperpigmentation, going way beyond the whole age spot myth. Tens of millions of people are dealing with some form of hyperpigmentation right now. It's incredibly common, but the fascinating structural truth behind it and how to actually reverse it from the inside out is almost never talked about. I'm really excited to unpack this research with you today because, honestly, it completely changes the paradigm of how we view our skin. We're not just talking about surface-level beauty here. We're talking about deep cellular biology and what happens when our internal protective mechanisms just break down.
So let's start with a really big question. Are those dark patches, what we call age spots, actually just an inevitable part of getting older or spending time in the sun? We hear it all the time, right? Oh, it's just part of getting older, or you just spend too much time at the beach. But if we look closely at populations of the exact same age with the exact same UV exposure, the uneven distribution of these spots completely invalidates that simple mechanical model. Actually, scratch that, it shatters it. If it's not just aging in the sun causing these patches, what is actually going on beneath the surface?
When you look at conventional treatments, things like chemical peels, ablative lasers, bleaching creams, they're really just scratching the surface. Literally. They merely address the surface-level accumulations of pigment. The big problem with this, they completely fail to resolve the underlying cellular pathology. This means the spots almost always come back, sometimes even worse than before because of post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Now contrast that with true structural reversal. This is about restoring internal cellular homeostasis and stabilizing the very enzymes that control pigment at the root. It actually heals the skin from the inside out, which is what leads to lasting, permanent clearance. Okay, here's our agenda for today's explainer. First, we'll tackle the age spot myth. Then we'll dive into glutathione, the circuit breaker. Third, we'll explore hormones and missing minerals. And finally, we'll break down the 42-day recovery steps. Let's jump into Section 1, the age spot myth. We're going to officially bust this misconception right now, because to fix hyperpigmentation, we have to know exactly why the skin forms it in the first place. To get to the bottom of this, we first have to talk about melanogenesis. Sounds complex, I know, but it's simply your skin's way of building a protective UV shield against cellular damage. Specialized cells in your epidermis, called melanocytes, synthesize the polymer melanin. You can think of these melanocytes like dedicated workers in a factory. When the factory's running smoothly, you get a perfectly smooth, even tan, a perfectly distributed shield. But here is the key takeaway. Clinical hyperpigmentation, like melasma, is absolutely not a general excess of melanin. It's a localized structural failure. It's the uncoordinated activation of specific clusters of melanocytes. Basically, it's a clear sign that the local factory workers have gone completely rogue and lost their ability to regulate themselves. Moving on to Section 2, glutathione, the circuit breaker. Let's see how this pigment-producing factory actually loses control and what triggers this total structural failure. So the absolute star of the show here is a tripeptide called glutathione. Think of glutathione as the master biological circuit breaker for your skin's pigment production. It's an internal regulator that does two massive things. First, it directly inhibits tyrosinase, which is the enzyme that triggers pigment production. Second, it neutralizes intracellular reactive oxygen species. Now, if reactive oxygen species sounds like a mouthful, just think of it as cellular rust. Glutathione is your body's built-in rust remover. It keeps the melanocytes calm, cool, and collected, completely preventing them from overreacting to stress and UV rays. But what happens when that glutathione mechanism fails? Well, a pretty severe chain reaction kicks off. When your cellular glutathione reserves drop below a critical threshold, the biological off switch just breaks down completely. Asymmetrical pigment synthesis begins. Without glutathione there to buffer the oxidative stress, the cell panics. It initiates an adaptive survival response by massively upregulating melanin. Because melanin actually has antioxidant properties of its own, this sudden overproduction is a desperate emergency defense mechanism to protect your cellular DNA from damage. That dark spot on your skin, it is literally your body throwing up an emergency shield because its primary defense, glutathione, has run totally dry. Which brings us to Section 3, hormones and missing minerals. Why are we running out of this vital glutathione in the first place? Let's look at the drivers of this cellular depletion. We've got three massive internal culprits driving this failure. First, trace mineral depletion, specifically a profound lack of selenium. Next, endocrine shifts, which heavily involves a sudden drop in protective estrogen. And third, allostatic load. Basically, the combined wear and tear of modern life. We're talking chronic stress, terrible sleep, and high glycation from ultra-processed carbs, all of which rapidly consume your available glutathione. On top of that, an imbalance in your zinc to copper ratio actively disrupts the enzymatic assembly line. All of these factors violently drain your master antioxidant pool.
Consider this really powerful point. Widespread tissue deficiencies remain undiagnosed, directly undermining the enzymatic precursor matrix required for glutathione synthesis. We're basically looking at a hidden epidemic here. How exactly does selenium restore these enzymes? Well, standard agricultural practices and chemical fertilizers have completely depleted our baseline soil selenium levels. And without selenium, your body literally cannot turn the system on. It acts as the crucial spark plug that activates glutathione peroxidase, the vital enzyme responsible for neutralizing that cellular damage. Because standard blood tests often miss deep cellular trace mineral status, these widespread deficiencies go completely undiagnosed, secretly undermining your skin's ability to protect itself.
And, the story gets even deeper when we layer in estrogen and proteins. Endogenous estrogens exert a powerful protective antioxidant effect on our cellular architecture. During menopause, this circulating estrogen drops sharply. This decline dramatically escalates the biological demand for intracellular glutathione, which explains exactly why hormones cause melasma to flare up out of nowhere and why age spots accelerate so rapidly in postmenopausal women. Combine this with a modern diet lacking in bioavailable sulfur-dense animal proteins, and you literally starve your body of glycine, cysteine, and glutamic acid. These are the exact amino acid precursors required to sustain the glutathione framework. Trying to rebuild glutathione without sulfur-dense protein is like trying to build a brick wall without any bricks. No bricks, no wall. If you don't have the protein, you simply cannot rebuild the circuit breaker.
All right, Section 4, the 42-day recovery steps. This is the best part of the explainer, exactly how to actively rebuild the cellular matrix.
Achieving true structural clearance requires a really strict dual-phase approach. Step 1 is systemic nutrient resynthesis. You've got to aggressively rebuild your internal reserves daily with highly bioavailable selenium, think wild bivalves, and sulfur-dense unrefined proteins to rebuild that endogenous glutathione pool. Step 2 is topical antioxidant potentiation. We pair that internal rebuilding with a high-stability vitamin C serum on the outside. Topical vitamin C acts as a potent local tyrosinase inhibitor and actually donates electrons to regenerate oxidized glutathione right there in the dermal matrix. But remember for sure, to prevent the spots from coming back, topical interventions can never be applied in isolation. They have to be synergistic with those internal restorative nutrients. Now, your epidermal cellular turnover operates on a very strict biological clock. This means you must follow this uninterrupted protocol for a full 42 days. On day 1, you initiate the internal selenium and proteins alongside the topical vitamin C. Around day 21, natural epidermal turnover begins clearing the deep layer pigment as new, biochemically stable cells finally start rising to the surface. By day 42, visible stabilization and lasting structural fading are achieved. The old, misfiring cells just naturally flake away, replaced by a newly generated matrix that's completely capable of maintaining uniform pigment regulation. I want to leave you with this one final thought. True radiance isn't something you just slap on the surface. It is structurally built from within. By understanding the failure of glutathione, the absolute critical need for selenium and specific proteins, and the immense hormonal impacts on our skin, we can finally stop treating the surface-level symptoms and actually cure the root cause. So, what do you say? Are you ready to rebuild your cellular matrix? I really hope this explainer has completely transformed how you approach true, lasting skin health. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.